Good day everyone, I am Sir Jerickson Eschua and welcome to Animation 2. So before we start our session for today, may I request all of you to please bow your head as we feel the presence of our Lord through this prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hello and welcome to Animation 2. So for today, we're going to discuss on how to produce cleanup and in-between drawings according to guidelines in the production of in-betweening and production constraints. For our quote of the day, all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. And in order for us to pursue our dreams, we need to work for it and just keep going until we reach that destination. For our objectives, we're going to identify the production constraints in animation, we're going to apply design standards in producing in-between drawing, and we're going to produce in-between drawings based on guidelines. So I'll be presenting here an example of an in-between. So as you can see, we have here your key poses, your in-between, and one breakdown drawing. So your key poses is indicated by the black color. Your in-between is we have the green color and one breakdown which is on the red color. For the green one, we have about 5 in-between drawings. So basically, when you will be creating your timing chart, we only have 2 key poses, 5 in-betweens, and 1 breakdown. This is another example of an in-between. So as you can see, we have here a timing chart that is on halves. So we have your first key, your 5th key, your 9th key, and your 17th key. So we only have 5 key poses, and we also have here your breakdowns, which is indicated by BD. 1, 2, 3, 4 breakdowns, and we have now several in-betweens or twins. So as you can see, our twins is indicated by an odd and even numbers, but on our key poses, this is indicated by odd numbers because on our timing chart, when we are creating those key poses, each of the key poses is indicated by odd numbers. So that's how you create your keys in drawing and animation. So your twins actually makes the drawing more smoother. So the more twins you have or in-betweens you have, the smoother the action will be. So our definition of in-between, by the way, is a type of a movement and the time that passes between each key poses and drawing position. So as you can see, as I presented the example a while ago, so it makes the action not jittery and it flows more naturally. So let's proceed now to the 10 steps to a perfect in-between. This is according to John Hooper and Michelle Gagne. So let's think about this and let's try to answer the following. What does the scene look like? So we need to have an understanding of the overall blueprint of your storyline or your drawing. So we need to think about the layout, the size of your characters, your props, your buildings, the placement of the character. Will it be farther or will it be closer to the public? The light source, how big the elements are, and how far away the elements are from each other. So we need to have an overall understanding of the overall scene of your animation. Next is what are you drawing? So we need to have an idea on what will be your final purpose on creating that drawing. So is it a smoke, a fire, an oil, a water, a fat character, or a skating character? Remember that all things or materials have different ways of moving, so they will be in between differently. So each of our characters um, will have different movements, especially with the different body types, and even on the um, different materials that you will be using and different objects that you will be using. They will have several actions based on their uses. Okay, so let's proceed to the first step in creating our in-between. So we need to check first your timing chart. So the timing chart, as I said before, will be your blueprint in creating the keys and in-betweening. So we need to have a balanced drawing and we have to create different timing charts on the different parts of the body of the character. But that is the ideal. But if you are a animator starting, you just need to create the in-between based on the character, not on the parts of your character. So as you can see here, this is your scene 1 or key 1, and we have here the sequence and scene numbers. Okay, we also have your peg holes here that is used with the Acme peg bar on your drawing table. Okay, so we have here the different timing charts. We have the halves, the thirds, the fourths, the favor, and halves and fourths. So we have here the several different types of timing charts that can be used on the in-between. So our step 2 now is to find the arcs. So this is a very important part of finding your in-between because the movement of most living and non-living things follow a circular path of action called arcs. So as I have presented in our previous discussion, when you will be walking or running, we follow what we call the S-curve. So this is an example of an S-curve. So another one, if we throw a ball, so it can follow a C curve, or we have here your arc. So those are the natural flow of action with the different objects. So in cartoons, it's very useful to follow also the arcs, especially when you are creating certain movements that is very cartoony. So circular path is very important in doing that. Next, we have in-betweens done without following the arcs, change the action radically. So it will make it jerky and stilted animation. So we have to create an in-between that follows an arc. So we need to find that arc. So this is also an example of using an arc. This is a frog jumping from the leaf going to the water. So it follows a C curve or an arc. Next, so this is an example of the right and wrongdoing of finding your arc. So we have here the right way. As you can see, this is a curve. So in between an arc, and we have here straight in between, not following the arc. So your movement is here going here to here. So that's a straight path, not a curved path. Okay, if animators hasn't indicated the arcs, you must find them yourselves. To find the arcs, place the extremes you are in betweening plus the preceding and following extremes in sequence on pegs. In our example, we have here 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So we have here your in-between. This is number 2 and this is number 4. So on the traditional way of doing animation, so they use cell paper. So they do the flipping method in order for them to create the in-between. So we have here your key pose, this is your key pose, and this is your in-between. So they flip the second page in order for them to create a motion from this key pose going to this key pose, and so on. So this principle for changing direction can be also applied to anything that is flexible. So our arc can be used in a leaf that drags as it moves through air, or a hair drags as it moves in one direction and overlaps the whips in different reverse. So this is a hair and this is a leaf using the arc. Step 3 is to turn on the backlight and place the drawing in the flipping order. So this 10-step in-betweening is very useful in the traditional way, but you can also do this in doing the modern way, which is using your layers as a basis in creating the in-betweens. Okay, so flipping, we have here your in-between, your key 2, and your key 1. Next, we're going to build the foundation of your in-between. Now, using the backlight of your light box, plot the position of the shapes and lines between two keys. You have to make sure that you are following the arcs and are placing the shapes in the charted position. So, in creating your in-between, we have to create the two keys here that is placed on top and the bottom of the in-between paper. And then it should follow an arc. So after that, you need to finish the drawing with skeleton for your in-between by accurately placing the shapes between the shapes and the lines between the lines. So meaning you need to adhere to your first key pose and to your last key pose so that you can create in-between that is very similar shape and size to your key poses. Next, in building the foundation of your in-between, we need to understand the basic shapes in order for us to assist in drawings. So let's take a look at this example. So we have here a rock and a plane. So this is a very difficult in-between because basically the shape is very rugged in this one also. Okay, so in order for us to create a very good in-between, we need to get first the basic shape. So as here we can create a cube, okay, and here we can also create a cylinder for the plane. Then after understanding that, we can now create an in-between that is created based on that basic shape, okay, and then you can now add the details, okay. So after building the foundation of in-between, we need to turn off now the backlight. After that, step 6, we're going to flip the drawing to check the in-between. Now, the key here is doing the flipping in a manner that you can see your in-between in motion and between the two key poses and easily make changes to it. So this is a good way in understanding if the movement is smooth in flowing or jittery. So just like a flip book, the movement should be smoother. Next, we're going to flip and check the in-between, flat bent wire tracing or three-dimensional drawing. So as you can see here, even though we are doing two-dimensional perspective drawing, we can always create three-dimensional because nowadays this is the trend, not the 2D anymore. Okay, so we can also create the three-dimensional drawing so that our cartoons will be much more appealing to the eye compared to the flat bent wire tracing. If the drawing looks flat or warped, it is probably because it hasn't been in between for three-dimensionally. So another key thing that in understanding your in-between is we need to think of our in-between as three-dimensional. So this can be overcome by following the previous advice of building the in-between using the basic shape. So when creating your in-between, understand your basic shape, such as your cube, balls, cylinders, squares, rectangles, and so on. After laying the basic forms, it is a simple matter to add the details, and it is very important to build the in-betweens in this manner. So, step 6 is we need to understand in-between in three dimension, understand and create the basic shapes and adding the details. 7. Rolling and checking the in-between. So after doing step 6, let's do another flipping method to check your in-between. Step 8, turn on the backlight and then shift the drawing of the pegs to check the volumes and details. So why do we need to do this? In order for us to check if the actions and the size of the character is still the same from the in-between. So these are 8 pages of the drawing. So as you can see, there are several in-betweens hidden here. And your key pose, this is our key pose and the last key pose here. So we need to check if the shift of the drawing is still smoother. Okay, so objects shifted and lined upon top of each other for in between, the head in this case. So place the paper head, place the paper on the position where the heads are on the same position and place the peg holes as your reference. Okay. Okay, and number 10, we need to roll through and flip the drawings to do a final check of your in-between. And after doing this and you found several errors or problems, you need to fix it as soon as possible and start the next in-between. Actually, it's quite tedious in creating the in-between. So as newbie in creating your animations, okay, one in-between is already necessary when you will be creating your animations. So from first key pose to your next key pose, example, we have 5 frames. We have your frame 1 and frame 5 as your key poses. Frame 3 can be used as your breakdown. Frame 2 and frame 4 can be used as your in-between. So that's how you do your animation using in-betweening. So this is an example of timing chart. So we also have here your even halves. So there are about 1, 2, 3 key poses, this which is indicated by circle. We also have here your 5 and 13 as your breakdown. We also have here your in-betweens, which is we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and 16. Those are your in-betweens. And key pose, there are also other key poses such as 3, 7, 11, and 15. These are your key poses. This is another example of an in-between. Okay, we can create a timing chart using this one. So we have example, this is your timing chart. So this can be your key pose, key pose, key pose. This is your in-between, 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 in-between. So this is an example of a walk cycle. This is another example. Okay, so we have 1 until 11. So 6 can be your breakdown here. As you can see here, this is your key pose, or this can be your breakdown because we have 11 keys. Okay, so this is the movement of that animation. Okay, so why is it important to know or do in-between before production? Because in-betweens are the drawings which create the illusion of motion, and it makes the animation be in a fluid motion. Okay, so that's the goal of in-between. So let's now proceed to the three constraints on production. We have the schedule, scope, and execution. The first one is the schedule. So this is the first constraint because at some point, every project needs to get done. Schedule presents the budget, and the budget is mostly how large of a crew you can have for a certain amount of time. So the more budget you have and the more crew you have, the costly it is to make. While it is possible to raise money, it is much harder to find extra time. Schedule is what can we get done in this fixed amount of time. So in the production of an animation, so it really takes some time. So several animation movies takes years to finish. An example of which we have The Incredibles. So before The Incredibles 2 was released, um, it took them how many years to create that final 3D animation. Another example is Frozen. So from Frozen 1 to Frozen 2, it took them 2 to 3 years to finish before they can release the next um, uh, sequel of that animation. So it takes years in order for you to finish one animation. So schedule is a key important part in doing the production. So this is an example of this is a constraint of animation production. Another is scope. So scope is the creative constraint. How big will this project become? So the scope can also indicate um, how will the movie be produced? How many hours will it be produced? So that's another indicator in the scope because scope can come down to every single shot of the film or show. Scope is about finding some versions of what we're trying to do that fits other constraints. So how big will your project will become? So let's think about that. And next one is execution. So how will we then execute our production? So this is the craft and quality that we bring to the work. Like all the constraints, it is dependent on the other two. Execution isn't just about making something of the highest quality because there's no objective measure of that. It's about finding the right quality for the project at hand. Okay, so we need to execute the production that is based on the quality and standards set by your production manager. Okay, let's proceed now to the ethical and legal constraints in the animation and film industries. So, as future animators and you're going to produce your film, we need to understand these legal constraints. So, the first one is we have the codes of conduct. So, these is the general rules and guidelines that should be followed by every producing companies. We also have here the ethical standards. So we need to have a guideline that employees should follow. Okay, ethics. Okay, when doing your production. Next is privacy policy. So employees and customers' informations and details should be uh, kept confidential because we should now follow the Data Privacy Act that is implemented here in the Philippines. So we also have privacy intrusion and misrepresentations and offensive materials and obscenity. So we need also to think about this because some of the films nowadays, um, this includes some materials that is not okay for children, materials that should not be presented with a certain culture. So we need to think of our viewers as one of the constraints and legalities when creating the film. And the last one is intellectual property and copyright. So when doing your animation, you have to think about copyright issues if your drawing materials is copyrighted or not. The music also can also be copyrighted if it's not used properly. So that's some of the legal constraints that animation in film industry should think about. So we have five. We have the codes of conduct, ethical standards, privacy policy, intrusion, misrepresentation, offensive materials, and intellectual property and copyright.
Thank you for watching, and I hope that you have learned many things from our discussion. See you on our next lesson. Keep safe and God bless.